This is the second talk in a series of talks I gave for San Diego Python. I gave this one last night and I forgot to record it. Back in May, I talked about customizing the Django-admin, and if you're not familiar with the Django-admin at all, that talk gives a brief introduction. This talk gives a very brief intro, but mostly assumes you've already used the Django-admin a little bit, you're familiar with Django slightly, and you've started to experience some slowdown that you're looking to optimize. This talk is just an introduction to all the optimizations you can do in Django and in the Django admin. And I have some additional resources at the end of this talk if you want to dive deeper. For this talk, I'm going to continue using our blogging application that I used in the previous talk. We have blog posts in one model. Each blog has an author, which is another model. And a blog can have 0 or more categories, which is our last model. I don't recommend actually building a real blogging application with this code, but it gives us a data model that people can be familiar with. The classes on the right, they deal with how this is displayed in the admin. Using those few classes, we get an interface that looks like this, where we can browse blogs, see their authors, browse them by year or when they were published, browse them by author, category, or more. It's extremely powerful and definitely one of Django's killer apps. However, when you first set this up in the admin, things were really fast. But as you loaded hundreds of blogs, thousands of blogs, millions of blogs, things started to slow down to a crawl. And that's what this talk is about. The first thing I want to introduce when debugging performance issues in Django, including in the admin, is the Django debug toolbar. This is a third-party package for, as you might expect from the name, debugging Django. It works in the admin, but it can work anywhere that you have a Django setup. However, it is only meant to be run in development, not in production. While it has a lot of features, I'm going to spend most of the time in the SQL panel, which is for debugging database queries, as you can see on the right. On this page that shows 100 blog posts, it uses 209 database queries to do that, and that's a lot. In production, this page would probably take a full second to load or more, which is an eternity for a web page. The SQL panel shows exactly which queries are run on any given page, which is pretty helpful. It shows how long they took, which in development is less helpful because compared with production where you have a remote database server and everything, the times give you an indication but may not be exactly how long things take in production. It also mentions that of my 209 database queries, 202 are similar and 100 are outright duplicates. The very last item in the list here is fetching the author for a specific blog post, and this is one of the duplicated queries. So Django, because of this code here, pretty naively looped over the 100 blog posts and for each one made an additional database query to get the author when it was displaying the string representation of the blog post. This is an area where a straightforward database join could eliminate 100 unneeded database queries. So one possible fix is to tell Django to perform that database join. In the admin, this is done with list select related, which is an attribute that contains a list of foreign key fields you want to join. This works fantastic. Another possible fix is to tell Django to list the attributes you want to display. See, if you thought to yourself, why didn't Django just do this for me? Well, if you told it, hey, I would like to display the author, it's a foreign key field, it will automatically say, oh, I know that this is a foreign key. I'll automatically do this join for you. Either one of these solutions will result in those 100 unneeded database queries going completely away. By reloading this page, I can see, oh, we're down to 109 database queries. Half the problem is gone. We've eliminated half the queries with no real reduction in functionality, and things will be much faster. While fewer queries is not strictly better, unneeded queries are virtually always an unnecessary slowdown. Still, 109 database queries is not great. Another culprit, and this is pretty similar but not exactly the same, is where we're showing the list of categories for each blog post. Similar to showing the authors, this resulted in another 100 database queries. For each blog, it asks for the categories for that specific blog to display them. However, this one isn't fixed in exactly the same way, since it is a many-to-many field instead of a foreign key. Sometimes many fields are also called reverse foreign keys because you have a reverse foreign key from an intermediate table. How we handle this is similar but a little bit different. You can't just say list select related and list the foreign key field. However, Django does have a method for this called prefetch related. It's a little bit different. There isn't a list prefetch related attribute. Instead, we override the getQuerySet method on the admin class for posts. And you could override this method for lots of different reasons, but probably prefetching is the most common reason you'd want to do this. This lets us get all the categories for all the blog posts, all the 100 blog posts that we're displaying in one additional query. So it reduces those 100 queries to one rather than just completely eliminating them. So that takes our 109 database queries to 10. 10 is pretty good. Using 10 queries to show 100 blog posts means there's nothing doing one query per blog or anything like that. That's almost always an indication that something's wrong. A couple of those 10 queries involve counting the results, which can be slow as the number of records reaches sort of the hundreds of thousands, millions of records, or showing the, this many results out of this many. Those kinds of things can be slow. There's a few ways to optimize that, but I'm going to skip that for this talk due to time, although some of the linked resources at the end do deal with it. One other area that I wanted to talk about that can be a slowdown in the Django-admin is in the edit page or the add page. This is where, when you're editing a specific blog, for example, it renders an HTML select box of all the authors for the blog, or all the possible authors for the blog. If you only have, 100 authors or so, this won't really be a problem. However, a few thousand authors would cause pretty significant slowdown, rendering a select box with thousands of items. If you had hundreds of thousands of authors, this would probably cause the page to time out and it just wouldn't render at all. Django does have a solution for this. It's called a raw ID field. This tells Django to render this field a bit differently, to open a new window to filter and search for the author you want. You can use it for any type of a field, any type of a foreign key field, but that's sort of how it works. And this is sort of what it looks like in the interface. Rather than rendering a enormous select box with unlimited items potentially, you have it shows this is the ID of the author, this is the author's name, and you can sort of search and filter by it by clicking the search icon. That's essentially my talk. I did want to point you to some additional resources, including Jacinda Shelley's excellent longer talk on optimizing the Django-admin from PyCon of this year. The Django debug toolbar docs are really good. Django actually also has some documentation in the Django docs itself on optimizing database queries. I also have sort of a link to my past talk on customizing the Django-admin. And these are some future talks that I'll probably give the next time that we're short on speakers. I guess if you have any questions or comments, you could post it in the comment section on YouTube. Otherwise, I will also post the link to the slides and the link to the PDF of these slides also in the description on YouTube. Thank you very much for listening.